So specifically when it comes to like phosphorus levels, that these tests are really enabled to give an accurate representation of phosphorus levels in these high peat soils because of the organic matter, like you had mentioned, that kind of throw off your pH readings as well. What do you think about like the level of accuracy and how much can we rely on like phosphorus level test results, like values from this Mehlich 3?
I feel a little stronger about a Mehlich 3 than I do a saturated paste, right?
Okay.
So for me, and especially if you're doing a Mehlich 3 in an outdoor soil, we know that as soon as we throw phosphorus in our soils, it's going to be bound by, if you have relatively high amounts of clay, it's just going to bind to the aluminum in your clay and not necessarily show up in something like a saturated paste. But a Mehlich 3 being a hard acid should be mimicking perhaps what fungi do to release phosphorus, right? So you will get a better representation through a Mehlich 3 because it's a stronger acid, an acid that's trying to mimic what fungi do to extract that phosphorus. But not every soil is going to have all of that fungi to be able to extract the amount of phosphorus that might actually be there. So if you're not a biology grower and you don't have that biology, then it might be overestimating your phosphorus availability. Would you agree with that, or is that contradictory to what you're thinking?
So from what I kind of researched, is almost that the value can be all over the place, and that we can do multiple tests on the same soil sample and get pretty widely different values from this Mehlich 3. So I've kind of put less of my faith into it, like less of the foundation of like how I'm building my soil and what I'm going to be amending each time. But if I see that the values are low, I'll do calculations and, provide what seems like an adequate amount of phosphorus to add, or potassium, or so on. But it just seems hard to rely on something that has these really widely fluctuating values when it comes to our nutrient profiles, when our ratios between our elements need to be so correctly balanced. It makes it kind of frustrating, right? But that's good to know that you think that it's more reliable than that.
I think your experience as a grower is always going to be more important than what you see on a piece of paper.
Right.
I was talking to a farmer yesterday, just reminding them that you may send in 1 cup of soil, 250 grams of soil. They're going to use 15 grams of that soil to actually measure in the Mehlich 3 extraction. So you're using 15 grams that could be representing 7-10 acres of soil, right? So
right.
We have to take this with a pound of salt.
Pound of salt. Yeah.
And we really do want to make sure that you don't refute your knowledge from observing that plant and being able to say, yeah, that's a purple that I'm not familiar with that cultivar. That could be a phosphorus deficiency or something. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. No soil is perfectly homogeneous, right?
Right.
So important to test all over, your field or all over your beds and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You had brought up fungi in the soil as, this test result, or this testing process kind of mimics fungi and the secretions of fungi and how they kind of help break down nutrients and stuff, and how the lack of fungi kind of prevents nutrient availability and things. This is something that I've looked into a lot also. Promoting fungi in my beds is a big thing that I do, with like mulching with like a hardwood like oak, and then intentionally inoculating local fruiting bodies that I'll spread the spores. I'll manually like broadcast the spores into my bed after introducing mulches and stuff like that. But also the introduction of like lower fungi and stuff. People a lot of the time use bokashi or IMO as a way to kind of promote lower fungi, which is something that I had done and have done for a long time. Specifically bokashi, I like making different bukashi recipes and kind of playing around with introducing different polysaccharide sources to promote biology and stuff like that instead of like glucose from molasses. And I've had a lot of good results, but I've kind of dove into like what exactly this lower fungi is quite a bit. Seeing a lot of it is very likely Zygomycetes species, Mucor, Rhizopus and stuff. And you know, I feel like this kind of sets the stage for larger fungi with just like the secretions, the stimulants, right? These biostimulants that kind of help promote these higher fungi. What do you think about like lower fungi and their effectiveness in actually producing the secretions that make these nutrients available? Do you think that we really rely more on these higher fungi, or that these lower fungi are like sufficient?
Yeah. So where's Leighton now? No, I actually was just about to. I was just about to ask you to share a little bit more on your thoughts
Okay.
around that, because I'm not
Yeah, yeah,
familiar with that concept of lower and higher fungi. But I'm a big fan of using different sources of bokashi in my mix. So sometimes using a bokashi that's on a different, on rice hulls, and one that's on coffee hulls, and using different types of fibers, wheat bran, and so on. And I add those on because I think I'm going to get different fungi and bacteria. And I just wanted to mention, you mentioned oak chips, and I think that's always interesting because um, oak is definitely, there are very specific fungi that kind of work on oak. And so if you are using something like oak chips, it's really nice to be able to do an IMO around an oak tree to make sure that you're getting the right microbes to really break down those oak chips. So I think that
yeah.
was really, it tied in so nicely.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I like to collect actual, like mushrooms, like fruiting mushrooms, right? From like your local area, and then introduce it. So like what I did most recently is collected, or I went to an arborist who has been collecting native trees from the surrounding area, local arborist, had been like chipping them all together. So you get like a real diversity of different types of woods, that already have like biology, different fungi and bacteria present in it. And I feel like that's a really good way of introducing like indigenous microbes to your bed. So
And
in terms of like lower fungi, higher fungi, and like making things available, um, I know I keep like asking you questions. I just know you're such a smart person, and I don't have a PhD, so I'm trying to pick your brain, even though like I'm the guest on your show.
I found the PhD in a Cracker Jack box.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm all excited about this, and I already had another question. Just, it's a lot about
Sure.
your practical experience. When you say you're introducing these, are you introducing them as a mulch, or are you breaking them down to the point where you feel comfortable incorporating them into the soil
As a mulch. I'm using
as
it
a
as
mulch?
mulch. And then like eventually they're gonna get kind of like worked in and stuff as I scratch like amendments in and things like that.